Hello, my friends. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. Let me know in chat if the audio is good. Seems like it is so far. So we're going to give it one more minute, and we're going to see about talking about what scales you can choose to connect with your playing. All right, perfect. So I'm going to play a little piece until people hop in here, and then we're going to talk about choosing a scale that connects with your playing style. And a lot of people struggle to choose something that works for what they want to do. If you're a melodic player or you're a percussive player, you're going to be drawn to different scales. So let me play a little piece on the marara to start, and we'll have a little discussion about choosing a scale. Okay, so if you have any questions for people watching this now or people watching it in the future, be sure to write them either in the comments or in the live chat. What we're discussing today is choosing a scale that matches your playing style. And a lot of times when people are first starting out on the handpan or RAV, they choose a scale that is a commonly accessible scale, like the Celtic or the double ding or the pygmy. And those are a fantastic place to start. But I wanted you to know what scales I would choose if I had to go back in time and sort of repurchase my first instruments. What scales I would choose for my playing style as a songwriter, and also what scales would be useful for somebody who is a percussionist and wants to approach it more from a drumming standpoint with melody and chords secondary to that. So we're going to take a look at that. The first scale, if I had to choose one that was just melodic, like 100% melodic, it would be the marara scale, the one I just played right now. And the marara is the same exact scale as an Aegean scale. It just moved down to A versus being up in C. On a handpan, C Aegean is a very common scale. This scale has the potential to be particularly melodic because of the bottom four notes. So if I'm walking up, I have up until the fourth note available for a change in root. So I'm going to change this so we can see the top half here. So if I'm walking up, all the way up to the 4, and if I change any of those, Because of this movement, we have a ton of different chordal combinations available. Let me take a look at this real quick and quiet this device because it keeps chirping at me. Okay. All right. So because of the layout of the marara scale, you really have more potential for dissonance, but also sort of melodic accompaniment than other scales. If you listen to this compared to what I'm going to show you next, like the pygmy, there's a lot less of a potential for interactions that don't feel as comfortable for new players. So if you're someone that's familiar with music or has a good ear, marara is a fantastic place to start if you want to write songs. If I were to play this percussively, it's going to feel very messy. Because of that pull between the center and the one, the marara really wants you to think about how do I relate the rest of the notes to these two in particular. So listen if I'm just focusing on the center note. I can do the same thing for the one. It feels a little more minor. Same thing for the two. Same thing for the three. Same thing for the four. So our octave note is there. Because of this, I can really do a lot of motion down here. And it feels connected, makes sense. But it's only really going to work for people that want melodic playing styles. So single notes, chords, not just ding-centric or center note-centric. So great for people looking for songwriting skills. Next up, as SK mentions, I really think that the ELO pygmy is great for percussion. SK agrees with me. It has sort of a broader sound, and because it's so low, it's better suited for sort of like a droning percussive style. Oftentimes lower instruments get lost if you're playing them outside. The ELO pygmy is a very loud instrument, but as with all, even an F2 pygmy, like if I were playing a handpan, low instruments get washed out when there's background noise. And that includes things like a car or a motorcycle going by. Even someone talking can kind of drown it out because your speaking voice oftentimes is in the range of these instruments. Because of that, this shines a little bit more in percussive style. So if I was doing... There's a lot more space to do fancy percussive techniques as well. Works well because although it's very low, all of the notes in the pygmy scale really work pretty tangentially. Unlike other scales, the pygmy, both the ELO pygmy and the G pygmy, have notes that are horizontally related. So I can play a triad with 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, and 1, 3, 4. That's very unusual. Typically, horizontal relationships don't work. Dyads on the same side work. Horizontal relationships don't always work. So let me show you again. If I was playing the ELO pygmy, 3, 4, 5 works. 2, 4, 5. And also 1, 4, 5. So although this is a percussive scale, and especially the ELO pygmy, you can still use it in a melodic way, but it's a lot more forgiving than something like the marara because of the relationship of the rest of the notes to the center. And really, for percussive players, this is the note that they should be paying attention to. And playing this, even on the virtual player, playing this alongside the side notes is going to give you the clearest example of whether you're going to connect with that scale. So let me play you two things on here, one percussive and one a little bit more melodic, so you get a sense for it. Maybe I'll play one piece on this and then one on the G pygmy, so you have sort of a similar feeling to it. So this is more a percussive piece. This is Internal Sun off of my album Lux Natura. I'm going to change cameras too. There we go. So listen to this, which has that percussive feel. If I shift it up to a G, it's going to sound completely different. Let me change my camera. So here's the G pygmy, same song, same movement. Because it's higher, it doesn't have as much of a percussive feel. And I find this one feels more melodic and is a little less useful for percussion, but still a suitable instrument for that as well. But here's the same song, Internal Sun, on the G. So a lot of the difference in how you hear it is just because this is higher pitch. So if I'm playing that same sort of percussive technique that I was doing before, I completely agree in interexistence. It really is a hard thing to choose in the beginning. And I really, really recommend that people watching this now or watching this after look for players like SK, like interexistence, like myself, that are not just playing it percussively. And there's nothing wrong with that playing style. I like that playing style as well. However, to pick a scale that you connect with, you really need to hear how the notes relate to each other. And if you're just hearing random playing, you can't really get a sense for it. And I'd say 90% of the demos for RAVs and handpans are presented like that. So it's super hard to connect with a scale if you don't hear the rest of the notes in relationship. So even on the virtual player, if you're playing it, play the notes as a dyad. So go through all of the notes if you're choosing one. Go through all of the notes that are next to each other. Be comfortable with their relationships and see if you connect with that. See if there's any horizontal relationships. And then also see how the top relates to the bottom. So on the pygmy, I have lots of choices. this relationship between 1, 3, and 2 has sort of a jazzy feel to it. And that song that I just played, Internal Sun, uses that tension between these 3 notes in order to build the backdrop to what's happening. So really recommend observing scales that way. The other thing is, if you are playing even on a different type of instrument, so say you're playing the RAV Moon in this case, having a scale in a different key really changes the feel significantly. So far we've heard G pygmy, Elo pygmy, and this is D pygmy. This is a lot higher. But because it's higher, it changes the feeling of it. And it doesn't seem like it would make that much of a difference, but it does. And I'll play that same piece I just played. You'll find on the moons that the moons are better suited for not really percussive playing. It has the capacity to be percussive. However, it really shines in its melodic capacity. So you could still use the ding as your focal point, but a lot of the richness of the sound of the moon comes from the harmonics. So you adjust your playing to kind of make use of that in a way that feels productive and useful for you. So. Okay, next up on our list is going to be a scale that I very much recommend for everybody at the start. If you're choosing between a B-Celtic, a B-Kurd, and a B-Celtic double ding, all are great choices. None of them, this shouldn't dissuade you from any of them. If I had to choose between the 3 of them, I would take the B-Kurd, as SK had said earlier, because the B-Kurd has an extra half step in it that makes a huge difference in the number of triads and diads that are available on it. So I have a completely different progression just because of this half step, this F sharp and then G. There's some talk where people will say that the 2, which is the G, makes it a little harder to use than other scales, like the B-Celtic. This is true. You have to be mindful of how you use that too. But it's worth it to have it just to open up your available songs. B-Celtic is amazing. It works for 99% of people. If you're someone that's really focused on wanting something that's percussive but has a good mix of progressions, the B-Kurd is a really great example of that. And I can give you a quick demo of that. So if I'm playing the same little bit that I've been playing to demo them. All the way up until the 4 available to us. And because of that progression, we have all of that. It fits a little bit better into alternative music, or maybe rock style, but it's closer to a true B minor than the pentatonic feel of the B-Celtic. So here's a little demo of a tune on this. This is Solifaction off of Wild Spaces, but that was played on a C-Kurd, and this is a B-Kurd, obviously. as you can hear, that G makes a huge difference in the progression that's available for you. Stefan, I'm very glad that you're learning Imagine on there. That's fantastic. Kurd is a great scale for covers, as well as I've mentioned in other videos too. So highly recommend it if you want versatility and you're not afraid of having a note that could be a little trickier to use. It really isn't. I wouldn't say this is any more advanced than the Celtic. It just takes a little more mindfulness. Between the three we've talked about so far, I would rank the pygmy at the easiest so far. I would rate the Kurd second easiest, and marara as a harder scale between the three of these. And this just has to do with how the rest of the notes relate to the center. For most players in the beginning, that's the only thing that's going to really stop them from learning things. So, yeah, B-Kurd is amazing. I agree with you, Stefan. Absolutely. All right, so we'll pull up another scale. I think one of the underappreciated scales is the G pentatonic. Not a scale I play all the time. This wouldn't be my only scale that I own, but a lot of my students that play a Native American style flute or just are more comfortable with pentatonic scales choose this one. And it's really not that drastically different than the C blues. The C blues has 2 extra half steps in it, but it's still a C pentatonic essentially, aside from that. This scale has a completely different relationship of notes compared to any of the B scales as well. Very different than the G pygmy as well. But because of these relationships, you're able to kind of meander in a way that feels resolved no matter where you end up. And this is what it sounds like. Here's a little piece on it. Very different sound than the G pygmy. G pygmy has that tension between these bottom 3 notes. The G pentatonic does not have that. So you can kind of view this as a very simplified B Celtic, but pulled down to a G. The only problem with pentatonic scales for some people is that because they're very open-ended, it's sometimes hard for people to find closure in a phrase. So if I'm just wandering around, I'm going to always kind of default back to the center or the 3 as my resolving note, because that's really where the scale is pulling from. And that's a little trickier for some people because it doesn't resolve in other places in the same way that people are used to. But it's a great scale. There's not much music up on YouTube with it, so I need to make an effort of getting that up there. Another very funky scale that I don't think is really harder than any other one would be my scale. And the Mystic, I think, is one of the best scales that they offer. I'm a little partial because it's my scale, but this scale is very much like the pygmy, but it's a pygmy with a percussive note. So you're able to, you have 2 notes. You're able to play something that has a percussive aspect to it. So drummers that are looking for the ability to have an attack that sounds very clean and sort of a pop, this is a great way of doing that. It's a pygmy that has a little bit more tension And the pygmy has a lot more resolution. This feels more like just a typical G minor, skipping some notes. Is the sound okay, guys? Is everyone hearing the sound okay? I can check on my end too. I don't know if my RAV companion is here or not. Let's see. I think it might be on your end, Jody, potentially. Let's see. Yeah, I think it might be on your end, Jody, because I'm hearing it. Anybody else in here? Let me know how it sounds, if you can hear it okay. Interexistence or SK, how's the sounds? I know there's a delay between us, but turn up the volume a bit. I just want to blow the speaker out. How's that? Okay, good. If it clips at all, I'll turn it up a tiny bit, so. All right. So the Mystic, if you include the 1 in the movement, you can kind of use it for all of the runs that you normally would. And it's a pygmy with slightly more tension. But because of this space, you don't really need to subtract your hand that normally would fall there. Okay, good. So I'm able to do a run. Even starting in this space, because I can use that just like I would a normal spot, and then I don't have to throw off my entire ability to do runs. So, and here's a little piece on that. So, in this scale, we really could think of this note as being present, like I said. So you don't have to change your runs at all. You're able to kind of navigate and not worry too much. I'm going to turn up the volume for when I'm speaking and then turn it down for when I'm playing. So if we want to play dyads on this, it's a very different layout than other scales, and this is just going to mean relearning it. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. So on this scale, we have all of these strange combinations. So I have horizontal, or sorry, kind of like cross shape relationships on the mystic, and that's because we've shifted this one position up here. And because of that, it basically means that we have to reevaluate where everything is. This is tricky in the same way that the B-Celtic double ding is. Because when we push up the notes, it means that all of the tabs that are available, whether you're doing them for my lessons or you've seen them elsewhere, have to be changed because the relationship of those notes is different. The same thing is sort of true with the C blues or D blues. The octave note for that is up here on the C blues. So you have to kind of shift your attention to this being your home base, which is very different than other scales too. But at least on this one, the 4, just like the pygmy, the 4 is the octave note. So anytime you have a scale, finding where your octave is going to really inform where your home base and your comfortable position is. The Celtic for me, although I'm comfortable using it, I prefer my home base to be here. And that's just because I'm right-handed, but I also find that this position works fine, but it's more natural for my brain to have this as the octave note or this as the octave note. And some people are going to favor the right side for their side hand, some people favor the left. So it's all kind of preference, but great. This is a great scale. I would rate this one around the same difficulty as the marara. The real truth behind picking a scale is that whatever you connect with is probably the scale that's going to work well for you. I have had students that have picked up Anolios or even the blues scale, which I think is kind of a hard scale to work with, and they connect with it so they're able to play it. So ultimately, my advice too, you can take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but don't feel like that is the deciding factor when you're choosing an instrument. Because if you don't connect with the scale just by listening to someone play a song, it's going to be hard for you to learn on it. You're not going to feel motivated to do that. So whatever scale you connect with, kind of use the information that you're getting about whether it's a good beginner scale as a metric, but don't let that decide if you're going to get it or not. So just so you guys are aware of that. Let me grab another scale here. So this is a little bit further up on the difficulty level. Speaking of the C blues, this is a scale that I was kind of surprised that they were going to make. And I think that RAV anticipated that it would be even more popular than it was. And it's a great scale, but I think the way that it's used is different than the approach for pygmy, Kurd, all of those scales. Because of where the octave note is, you really have to focus your attention here as your home base. So this is my position for home, right? Because of that, I'm either going to have to sacrifice this note and just be up here, or I'm going to bend my arm and do this to play it if I want to play something in this direction. It's not a big deal, but it just focusing your attention on your home base wherever your octave note is really how you orient yourself in your playing. This means, though, that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, I'm back to the octave note. So I have a ton of notes before I get to there, and that's partially due to these half steps. That's what gives it that flavor. If you were to ignore the half steps, it just sounds like a normal C pentatonic. It would work well actually with the G pentatonic as well. So here's a little piece on the C blues. This I would rate as high in difficulty or higher than the marara, because it's good for particular things. Some people are going to love it, some people are not, but it has less flexibility than something like the Kurd or the Celtic would have, or the pygmy. So here's a piece on the C blues with the audio turned down so it doesn't clip. Okay. play. So this is SK said, for me, versatility and flexibility were important. I wanted something to go with my other instruments. As much as I adore the Anolio, it's not easy to match it with other things. Yes, the Arabian Nights, the Anolio, Hijaz as well, the Rav Moon, those are all going to be scales that are a little trickier to use compared to other instruments. And it's just because of the half steps in them. A lot of handpans are laid out in a way that, in Ravs too, they're accessible to all styles of playing. But those three in particular, any harmonic minor-ish or Middle Eastern sounding instrument is going to be a little bit more challenging because we have these half steps to deal with. Also, the blues is in that same category as well. So you're absolutely right, SK. If a person wanted just the B-Kurd, what would be the best scale in a handpan as our only additional instrument to flesh out the possible percussion? Let's see. Here's one of just the B-Kurd, the scale in a handpan as our only additional. I would say a pygmy scale would be your other choice if you had a B-Kurd. I think the F low pygmy is a great scale. I hope that Rav makes it on an instrument sometime. The low pygmy is a different version than the pygmy that they have on the G and the E pygmy. This one has a little bit more of an extension on the bottom end, so it has a different chordal potential. So F low pygmy with 2 bottom notes. Rav used to actually make Rav pans, and I have one of their pygmies that I love. It's one of my favorite instruments. So that would be my recommendation for that. If you wanted something that was more melancholy, I think a C Aegean or a C Golden Gate would be great places to work as well, because they kind of cover the other side of the Kurd spiciness, but also pentatonic feel. And so maybe a melodic instrument to go along with your more percussive and chordal instrument would be a good choice, Stephen. So good questions. Any other questions? Feel free to write in the chat. Make sure you hit like on here as well. Also, if anybody in here doesn't know this, I offer one-on-one Zoom lessons that are song-based. So I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs that I've written. I cut them up and teach them to teach skills to people where they're at. So if you're just beginning, we can work on a piece that's more simple to develop earlier skills. The more advanced you are, the more pieces I have that kind of touch on the skills that you're hoping to learn. But song-based education is really, really useful. You wouldn't learn an instrument just by doing, like, this is fun, but this is only interesting as a part of a song. It's just musical noise. So this is all you can do. It's great, it's fun, but you're not really making much that people can connect with. That's just a technique. So technique devoid of context is just beautiful noise, pretty much. So if you're interested in song-based lessons, I offer them through Zoom, and Rewildyoursoul is my Instagram and also YouTube channel. So it's linked in the chat here as well. C Aegean, Stefan, Aegean, and C Golden Gate would be the two that I would recommend to you. I have a Golden Gate somewhere here, but it's not the newer edition, so I can't use it on this stream, unfortunately. But if you message me, or if you search C Golden Gate Rav, it'll come up. I have tons of videos with it. It's also on my album Luxnatura at the end of the album. It's the last track on there. So, okay. So let me show you guys another scale. So the blues, I would say, ranks up there with the Marara and also the Mystic. That would be my recommendation for that. So I'm going to show you 2 more scales. This one is a scale that I convinced Rav to make. Also, the Marmara is a scale that Rav had kind of said, we don't really like it. And I had asked them, just send me the prototype, I'm interested in trying it. And I loved it. And I thought it was a fantastic addition to their lineup. The Arabian Nights was another prototype that I was able to try and convince them to make, just because I think the more variety they have, even if not everybody wants an Anolio or wants an Arabian Nights, it's going to connect with some people. So it's better to have them there as an option than not have them at all. So there's particular styles of playing that like this. This is very much a percussion instrument. The progression is very tricky because of the 7 on the Arabian Nights. And if you listen to me walking up, if you would ignore the 7, it sounds like a normal jazz. With the 7, it sounds a little bit spicier. So I'm going to fix the audio so it's not clipping again on us. There we go. So listen to a little piece on this. You could also approach this scale with a bit more of a slow meandering style. This is the Arabian Nights, the one you already have. Maybe we need to do a lesson on this one sometime. See, you do connect with it. It's just how you play something that makes you connect with it or not. That's the skill you'll gain as a player as you get more comfortable and you've worked with more instruments. I would say the most important skill that I acquired is being able to take a composition from a different scale. And this is why I really promote actually learning a song, whether you write it or you learn something from me in a lesson. Because you can take that piece and adapt it to a different scale. And I'll give you an example in a second where I'll play the same piece on maybe 4 or 5 scales. This is my final thing. And you have pretty much an infinite number of songs you can create if you can adapt a pattern to a different instrument. In the case of this scale, it means that I'm avoiding some notes. I'm not playing it in the way that I'd play the pygmy or the Kurd, but I can still make it work, especially on simpler patterns. And I find that that's a skill that allows players to always kind of sound like they know what they're doing. And if you're a player that's felt very random in your playing, it feels unorganized, being able to repeat something is the most important skill that you can have. And you will never be able to connect with your scale if you do not have something to play on it. And whether that's just improvised, whatever it happens to be, eventually coming up with something simple, could be four notes that you repeat and you make a little change, that is going to allow you to connect to that instrument. And if even after that you're unable to connect with it, it's probably not the scale for you. And I find that when people don't connect, thank you, I appreciate that, inner resistance. But I find that when people don't connect with the scale, if they take a lesson with me, or anybody else too, having a song to play on that makes them feel like they want to work with it a little bit more. It's almost like you need to see what's possible on a scale before you can connect with it. And a lot of times, if you haven't heard a song on a scale, you can't really judge that. So, okay, let me show you guys maybe 1 or 2 more. So, the classic recommendation would be this scale. The D-Celtic. D-Celtic and B-Celtic, same thing, one's in D, one's in B. I like that idea, actually. I will do a video on that and either post it on my Rewildyoursoul page or I'll put it on Rav's page. That's a great idea, Stefan, thank you. Feel free to comment that in the comments of this and I'll remember it from that as well. So D-Celtic is a great scale. Probably clipping the audio because I have it up really high right now. One of the things that is fun about the D-Celtic is you can be kind of random in your playing. It has a little bit more direction than something like, I guess, the Arabian Nights. You can kind of meander. There's a lot of potential for dissonance on the Arabian Nights, but it's very much percussion oriented. Celtic is a good mix of both. You really don't have many dissonant notes. And that's why it's attractive to most people, because pretty much every handpan player starts with a D-Kurd or a D-Celtic. And they're great places to start because there's a lot of material available on them, and they're pretty simple to work with. So unlike the Celtic, or unlike the pygmy, I don't have many horizontal relationships on the Celtic. And that is not a bad thing, but it means that I have to not use this relationship. But I have entire sides that work together. Material that sounds good on a D-Celtic will sound good on a B-Celtic. Material on a B-Celtic will not necessarily sound good on a D-Celtic. And this is just what I found for my own playing. Again, I'll give you an example between two different versions of that. But there's something about the difference in pitch, whether it's high or low. Some material works better higher pitched, some material works better lower pitched. So let me play a little piece on this scale. I actually don't play the D-Celtic as much as I should, and I would be interested in working this a little bit more. I play the D-Celtic handpan a lot, but not D-Celtic RAV. So. Compared to a B-Celtic, it's going to have a very different feel. So let me play you something on a B-Celtic really quick, and then we'll be done. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know where my B-Celtic is, so just kidding. Unless it's hiding around me. So just to finish up, let me show you, I'm going to play the same thing on 3 different, maybe 4 different scales, so you can hear the difference between them. Try this. Try playing maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 on a scale, and then change just the first note. This is usually the first lesson I do with people as well. If you do that on the virtual player, it's going to give you an idea of what the bottom 3 notes are. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 times, 2, 4, 5, 6, and then follow it down. But listen to how this piece sounds on all of these. So. So that's Elo Pygmy. We'll try the same thing on the Marara. Same thing on the lovely Kurd. Same thing on the G pentatonic. Same thing on the blues. And this is the advantage. You really can test things if you can reproduce this. This is going to sound really funky. This is the C blues. This one you can tell does not work with this pattern. So for this scale, if I was playing it and trying to use that pattern, I would ignore the bottom 3 notes and shift my attention up. So I'd use center 4, 5, 6, 5, 4. And oftentimes, if you're playing a pattern, that's all you have to do to adjust it. Is say, instead of starting on the 1, I'm going to start on the 3, or I'm going to start on the 4. And 2 more. Same thing on the same thing on the D-Celtic. And then we'll be done. Okay, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments on this. I'll be checking this posthumously for RAV. If you're interested in one-on-one Zoom lessons that are song-based, feel free to be in touch on rewildyoursoulmusic.com or Rewildyoursoul on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And I hope that was useful. I think choosing a scale is probably one of the more important choices that you're going to make. So take your time when you're choosing. Don't be necessarily fully influenced by the recommendations online, whether myself or other people, because what you connect with is going to be the one that you do best with. So hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you guys next time. Any questions or suggestions for videos, be sure to write those in the comments, and I'll try to get them in the near future. So talk to you guys soon. Have a good weekend, and enjoy your playing.